Imagine your smartphone buzzes with another notification: 90% discount, sneakers for $3, a t-shirt cheaper than a cup of coffee. You open the app, click buy, and the product arrives at your doorstep straight from China. Easy, fast, and unbelievably cheap. That's exactly how millions of Americans lived in recent years. They thought it was simply a new era of online shopping, but no one suspected that behind every cheap purchase lay a scheme of global proportions. A scheme that was destroying jobs in the US, turning customs into a revolving door, and bringing billions to Chinese corporations. A scheme built on a small legal loophole known as the de minimis rule. But everything changed on April 2nd, 2025. With a single stroke of the pen, Donald Trump abolished the rule for China and Hong Kong. And with this decision, he didn't just close a loophole, he destroyed the very business model of TEMU and Shein. What was it? Protection of the national economy? Or the beginning of a new trade war that would hit every consumer? Let's break it down step by step. For years, Americans never wondered why apps like TEMU or Shein offered goods so much cheaper than local stores. A t-shirt for $3, earrings for $2, cosmetics cheaper than a McDonald's sandwich. It seemed China had discovered a magical formula for cheap happiness. In reality, it was far more prosaic and far more dangerous. At the heart of this story was the de minimis rule. Since the last century, it had allowed tourists and small businesses to bring goods into the US without duties or inspections if their value did not exceed a set limit. In 2016, the limit was raised from $200 to $800. And that's when things got interesting. Chinese corporations quickly realized, why pay taxes and ship containers through ports when you can simply split shipments into millions of small parcels? Each order went straight from a factory in Guangzhou or Shenzhen to a buyer in New York or Chicago. No duties, no customs delays. For consumers, paradise. For American businesses, a catastrophe. By 2024, volumes had reached record levels. More than 1.36 billion such parcels arrived in the US, almost half from China and Hong Kong. Roughly a third of them were from TEMU alone. It was an explosion. TEMU, which entered the US in 2022, instantly became a hit. In just a few months, it gained over 100 million active users and became the most popular shopping app in the country. People never asked how such prices were possible. They were simply drawn in by endless discounts and viral unboxing videos. Meanwhile, Shein was perfecting its model. Founded in 2008, the company turned into a real-time machine. Algorithms analyzed TikTok trends and new collections were launched almost daily. No warehouses in the US, no intermediaries, just Chinese factories and couriers. The price gap was crushing. An American factory sold a t-shirt for $25, while TEMU offered it for just $4. And it wasn't about fabric quality. American companies paid duties, maintained warehouses, followed labor laws. Chinese players exploited the de minimis loophole and played by entirely different rules. By September 2024, 18 textile factories in the US had closed. By May 2025, already 28. Thousands of workers lost jobs, especially in the South, where the textile industry had held on for decades. But the problem went deeper. Customs services began sounding the alarm. Millions of small parcels turned the inspection system into a sieve. Through the loophole came counterfeit goods, unsafe electronics, even precursors for fentanyl production. What began as a clever saving scheme had become a national security threat. At some point it became clear the rules of the game were about to change. Washington was preparing to hit the switch that would flip online trade upside down. On April 2, 2025, the White House did exactly what some had long awaited and others deeply feared. Donald Trump picked up a pen and signed an order that instantly destroyed the de minimis scheme for all goods from China and Hong Kong. From that moment, any parcel, whether $5 or $500, was considered commercial. It faced full duties, full inspection, and border delays. For TEMU and Shein, it was a strike to the heart. Their core magic, duty-free direct shipments from factories, vanished overnight. The White House explained the decision in the harshest terms. Trump declared, "We will no longer allow China to cheat American workers. We are restoring fair trade and protecting US national security." American business associations greeted the news with applause. For them, it was justice restored. Finally, Chinese competitors could no longer bypass the system and undercut prices. Textile industry leaders, who had watched their factories close one after another, were especially jubilant. But for millions of ordinary shoppers, it looked very different. Within weeks, prices on TEMU and Shein shot up. A t-shirt once $3 now cost $8. Earrings that sold for $2 rose to $5 and beyond. Delivery times also collapsed. Instead of shipping directly from Guangzhou, products now had to pass through US warehouses, customs, and local logistics companies. The hardest hit were low-income families. They had relied on TEMU and Shein to stretch every dollar. Now, amid inflation, they had no alternatives left. Economists immediately dubbed the effect a regressive tax on poverty. Meanwhile, the companies scrambled for solutions. TEMU cancelled more than 10,000 ad campaigns, slashed its marketing budget, and suspended influencer deals on TikTok and Instagram. Daily US users by May 2025 dropped 58% compared to March. Shein fared a bit better, but was still shaken. Its US user base shrank by about a quarter. Ad budgets fell 70%. Most painfully, the company was forced to raise prices, something it had avoided for years. Social media erupted with complaints. Shein just isn't the same anymore. At that point, American retailers seized the moment. Walmart, Target, Old Navy saw a chance to win back price-sensitive shoppers. While Chinese competitors stumbled, local brands launched aggressive promotions with slogans like "Fair Choice" and "Support American Jobs." The battlefield was set. Frustrated consumers versus emboldened domestic companies. But China would not sit idle. Beijing hit back with tariffs on a wide range of American goods, from soybeans and corn to electronics and cars. Tensions escalated rapidly, and the world braced for a full-scale trade war. While Washington celebrated what it thought was the death of de minimis, Beijing was already moving its pieces. The Chinese knew the US market was too important to abandon. The workaround was found just across the border. The answer was Mexico. Under the USMCA trade deal, goods made in Mexico could enter the US with minimal or no tariffs. Chinese corporations instantly saw the opportunity. Why fight Trump directly when you could simply reroute? Thus came the component assembly scheme. Parts were manufactured in China, final assembly done in Mexico. The box read "Made in Mexico," but in reality, it was Chinese exports through the back door. By 2024, more than 400 Chinese enterprises operated in Mexico, with investments exceeding $1.5 billion. The hub was the Hofusan Industrial Park, just 200 kilometers from Texas. Electronics, textiles, auto parts all began flowing north under the new label. For TEMU and Shein, it was a lifeline. If direct Chinese shipments faced tariffs up to 145%, Mexican assembled goods passed under softer rules. Consumers got cheap prices again, and companies kept a foothold. But Washington caught on. In February 2025, the US imposed 25% tariffs on most goods from Mexico and Canada, sparing only Canadian oil at 10%. Mexico also bowed to pressure, slapping duties on Chinese steel, textiles, and auto parts. But the damage was done. The US trade deficit with Mexico in 2024 hit $172 billion, nearly double 2018 levels. Meanwhile, tensions between the two superpowers deepened. Chinese tariffs targeted US farm products and electronics. American farmers fumed as soybean and corn sales fell. Silicon Valley exporters complained of roadblocks in China. On May 14, 2025, the US and China agreed to a temporary 90-day truce. US tariffs fell from 145% to 30%. China eased restrictions on farm goods and electronics. Markets reacted with cautious optimism. But the key point remained: de minimis was not restored. For TEMU and Shein, the door to their old model was permanently shut. Both firms pivoted fast. TEMU declared, "America is no longer our main market." By mid-2025, over 90% of its 405 million users were outside the US, in Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia. Shein had planned ahead. Even before Washington's strike, it shifted production to Vietnam, Turkey, Brazil, diversifying risk and cutting costs. That flexibility now looked brilliant. But in the US, the ripple effects reached beyond shopping. Google, Meta, TikTok lost billions in vanished ad contracts. Influencers complained of lost income. Viral unboxings vanished overnight, and digital media felt the shockwave. The market realized TEMU and Shein weren't just about cheap t-shirts. They revealed the fragility of the system itself. Loopholes, speed, scale. Their rise rewrote the rules. Their fall exposed the price. And now, as the dust settles, one question lingers. What next? Will this be a fair return to balance, where everyone pays duties and follows the rules? Or the start of a deeper global fracture, where trade wars become the norm and every buy button becomes a political act? One thing is certain: the era of duty-free Chinese parcels in the US is over. TEMU and Shein changed the market forever, but also became victims of the very system they tried to outsmart. And the lesson remains: cheap purchases are never truly free. Behind them always lies someone's loss, a shuttered factory, a job gone forever. This is only the first chapter of a larger story. The next battle for global trade is already brewing, and the stakes will be far higher than a $3 t-shirt.